Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our food sustainability webinar number 2. This is actually a series of webinars we've been doing with our food sustainability grant. So this is number 2. So everyone, welcome. We're going to go ahead and get started with our first speaker, Janelle Malone with OSU. Janelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chelsea. Good morning, everyone. I'm here on campus at OSU this morning in Stillwater, and Chelsea has asked me to speak very shortly this morning. I won't drag it long, about the SARE program. Everyone is very familiar with how attractive some grants can be, but what I would like to talk about this morning is one specific federal program that is, it's all over the country, and it is to enhance sustainable agriculture research and education, which is what the acronym SARE stands for. And the purpose of SARE is to support family farms, to promote conservation and strengthen communities, not just agricultural communities, but all communities, by promoting the sustainable agriculture strategies. And if you kind of think about those three areas of emphasis for SARE, you will see a very close correlation between economics, conservation or environmental issues, and community issues. So anything within those three areas would fit very well into a sustainable agriculture program. So how does SARE support those three efforts? And primarily, SARE is a granting program, so they do award grants, but a completely other side of the program that many people are not familiar with is actually the side that I work with. We are a professional development program here in the state of Oklahoma, and what we do is we provide resources and educational materials to support educational programming in sustainable agriculture. We primarily look to train our professionals, and while you immediately think of an ag professional as being maybe your county extension agent, which they are, but you also need to think in terms of maybe you have a neighbor that's doing a really good job of something, or you have someone in your community that is helping others in the community, and those are the people we are seeking out and trying to support. So that is my area, but for those producers and other programs that might be interested in pursuing a grant, let's take a few minutes and talk about the different grant programs that are available with SARE. The first one we'll look at will be the graduate student grants, which that's pretty specific. It is for a master's level or a doctoral level student who would like to pursue some sort of project to enhance their educational experience, and they will write for one of these graduate student grants. There are research and education grants, and these are primarily structured to encourage a systems approach, which is integrated all through the steps of production. That's planting, that's harvesting, that's processing, that's marketing. That encompasses all aspects of the particular industry that they're looking at there, and it generally will involve a team of researchers. These tend to be very large grants, and oftentimes they're multi-year grants, and we've had some really good luck in Oklahoma with these grants. The next one, which is probably going to be of interest to most of you will be a producer grant. And these grants can be multi-year grants. They do not tend to be as large as in terms of an award, but they can be grants that will help an individual producer with some aspect of their production, possibly funding a field try, some sort of on-farm demonstration, maybe helping them to identify a new way of marketing their products, or possibly helping them to establish like a new product or possibly a value added product for their farm. And these, I believe, are offered pretty much every year at, I'm trying to think when these are generally offered. I do not think the RFP is open right now, but you're welcome to look at that, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit. These on-farm research grants are where we pull in our ag professionals, maybe our researchers or our county folks, and they work with a farmer or rancher on a particular project. And it does not have to be horticulture. Obviously, you see here we've got some beef cattle projects that have been very successful in the past. We've had some forage production. We've had multi-species grazing. We've had some really good grants in this area as well. The professional development program grants, these are very similar to what I do for OSU, but individual organizations such as the tribal organizations or conservation districts or any other groups can write for a professional development grant. And these are really interesting grants. There's been some really good work done with using some of these PDP grants. And when you will see things coming from our office or here in Oklahoma, you will see that it is Southern SARE, which, if you know anything about the USDA, you know the USDA is divided our country or the United States into 4 regions. Oklahoma is included in the southern region, and you see on this little diagram that it's the rose colored, or I don't know, it could be the red on some screens, but our zones take in Puerto Rico, Florida, as far north as the Virginias, Kentucky, Texas. So the southern region, if you stop and think about that, that encompasses quite a few geographic areas. There's a wide variety of climate issues that we work with in the southern region. But those grant programs are all competitive grants, which means if you want to write, let's say, a producer grant and submit it to Southern SARE, that grant proposal will be reviewed against all other producer grants from this region. So you see, you may be competing against a citrus producer in Florida. It could be a producer down in the U.S. Virgin Islands that your grant is being weighed against. So in terms of competitiveness, the grants they're highly competitive and they are extremely varied in the southern region. Even if you look at Oklahoma and Texas, if you compare eastern Oklahoma to far western Oklahoma or East Texas to far west Texas, you're going to see a huge climatological difference there. So these grants are extremely competitive, and you see such a wonderful variety of topics covered by these grants. Now, the Oklahoma SARE PDP is the program that I mentioned earlier that I work for, and it stands for the Oklahoma Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education professional development program, and I have the best job in the state of Oklahoma because I get to work with the folks here at Oklahoma State University. I work with the folks at Langston University, and we are very excited that the College of the Muskogee Nation has been officially recognized as a 1994 institution, which means that at some point we will be incorporating their extension programming in with our PDP activities. And that's a cool thing. This is a big deal for us because we're one of the first in the nation, and certainly the first in the southern region, to have a 94 institution. So it's going to be interesting in the next few years. But what we will do is coordinate all sustainable agriculture professional development efforts here in the state of Oklahoma, and we can send our ag professionals to programs in other parts of the country. So we're training people not only at the local level, but we're also sending them to national trainings in other parts of the country. And of course, we always have available the training materials that are produced by SARE. And if you look over my shoulder, you'll see a lot of books and boxes of books. And those books, excuse me, those books are available for your programs free of charge. I can get you a set together as long as I have the inventory. If you will contact me and let me know if you need something, I'm more than happy to try to track it down for you. And also, if you know of any publications through OSU that you need, I can help with your organization getting those sets of publications. And also, if you are having a program, or if you want, maybe you're having a meeting or something like that, and you need one of the state specialists to come or one of the area specialists, I can help to facilitate their participating in your meetings as well. So if you ever have any need in those areas, just please feel free to give me a call. Since 1988, as I said earlier, Oklahoma has had some very, very good research projects funded by the SARE program, and we have had a total of almost 3.5 million in grants funded. And if you have any interest in looking into what these projects were or the outcomes of these projects, I would suggest that you visit the southernsare.org website. You will find links to all of these projects on that website. And below there is the contact information for both Terry Gibson at Langston University, Jason Warren here at OSU, and myself. So please, don't ever hesitate to give me a call or send me an email if you have any questions, because I'm here to help. And that's it for me. Thank you. It's very short, very sweet, and straight to the point. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, and you guys can unmute yourself if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask. Well, if anyone thinks of anything and we have time at the end, then you can always ask your questions then as well.
You have my email now. Just you can track me down and send me a message, and I'm happy to help in any way I can with any of the programs. We do, I'm trying to think, we used to, David at REDHAGE can answer a little bit more as to what's coming up in the future. This whole COVID thing has really interrupted some of our wonderful programming, and I believe down at the KERR Center they're starting to get back to the in-person meetings, and I know that there are some other activities that are going to be available in the next few months. So please just, if you have any questions or you need any help and you would like to attend something and you're not able to, please let me know.
Thank you, Janelle. Our next speaker is going to be Michelle Bowden with the QUAPAW Nation.
Hello, everybody. Let's see if we can get my screen up.
There it is.
All right, good.
Perfect.
Well, my name is Michelle Bowden, and I work with the QUAPAW Nation. I'm the Agriculture Environmental Specialist, and I've been working with a lot of food sovereignty programs with the tribe. I've been with them for 3 years now. I'm actually a tribal member. I decided to go back to school a little bit later in life and go back to serve my community and my tribal nation. So that's kind of my background on it. We have a whole lot of stuff going on. I'll just start with that. We actually started with, in 2018, I believe, we did a food sovereignty assessment, and we had a girl that worked with the VISTA program, and she's the one actually did that. And we did find that there was a lot of need in the area that we live. We're up in the northeastern corner of Oklahoma, and unfortunately, we live in an area that is a Superfund site. So with years of mining, caused a lot of destruction to the lands up here, with lots of lead exposure in the water, in the air, in the soils. And so we actually took on the lead of this, and we're the first tribal nation to be able to take on a Superfund site and remediate in our own lands. So one of the things that we started with is, of course, row crop production. Once we cleaned these lands off and took them down to bare soils, we decided to revegetate them and put them into production, mainly for food. We either wanted it for grazing lands, we wanted it for either row crop productions, really a lot of stuff that we can do with it. So we just started with the row crop production because we wanted to be able to feed the cattle that we have. The QUAPAW Cattle Company, I apologize, let me look and see if I can get the dates on when it started. I do not have the date, I apologize, but we started a cattle company, raised, right now we have, let's see, 330 cows, 150 to 160 steers that go into our meat program. Our heifers are marketed, and we have 13 bulls. We do all of this on grazing land of about 3,100 acres, and 2,100 acres of that is going to be a shared acreage that we do with other farmers. We also have a bison program. That also ties in with our cattle company. We do produce bison for meat, as well as just raising them and letting them graze. As everybody knows, bisons are really good to the ecology. They get out there and work the lands like they naturally should. And so we just kind of let them graze and do a lot of stuff out there. You see up in the top corner, we did acquire a white bison, white buffalo, I'm sorry, here the last year. And so they're a lot of fun. They're beautiful animals. They're very majestic creatures. We have most of them at our downstream casino to where people can actually go out and be able to see them. With that, we have a feed facility that we do in conjunction with our processing plant. As you see here, our feed facility, we've got quite a bit of room. We don't ever do mass loading when it comes to our feeding facility because we only produce as much as we actually need. All of the designs from The pins are actually a Temple Grandin design. She was really big in the animal welfare aspect of things, and we really wanted to follow along the lines of that. In conjunction with our feeding facility, there's actually, the pins will take them directly to the processing facility, so it has a lot less stress on the animals. Our processing plant is 25,000 square feet, cost about $5 million, and it's set up to be a training facility as well. We've got them set it up to where you can walk down and there's windows on one side to where you can actually, you know, be able to see what they're doing inside. So that's a really cool deal. We wanted to do that for the college students. You'll find that meat grading, meat cutting, things like that is kind of a art of the past. Not many people really do it anymore, and it's kind of a dying art. So we wanted to be able to have a facility to where people would be able to, you know, come in and learn those trades. In addition to, in the last few years, this was kind of my taking of things. I was really big on making sure that we can produce food for our community, especially our tribal members. And so the elder community garden, if you notice in the bottom right-hand corner, we actually made raised beds for our elders that are actually high enough to be waist high, so they don't have to bend over and be uncomfortable while they're doing that. We provided the soil for these as well as the actual beds themselves. We do a lot of classes and stuff out there and bring the elders out to be able to, you know, get their hands in the dirt, and there's nothing more relaxing to me on that. So we like to make sure that they also have a garden that they can go to and be able to harvest their own vegetables too. On the top is one of our market gardens. We actually use that garden to actually put produce into our farmers market. We run this market now. We're going to start running it year round. Before we'd run it from May to October, but we found a need in the community for access to fresh local fruits and vegetables, and our meats. Of course, we put it in our farmers market, and we wanted to make sure that we have access to that in our community. We live in really kind of a food desert area that you have to travel a little ways, and it being kind of a community that doesn't have a whole lot of money or access to transportation as easily, that we found that this was a pretty good way to be able to supplement and help our community. Also, we do seed saving. I started that last year with a grant. What I'm doing is I'm doing about 5 to 10 varieties. The main thing with seed saving is you got to do isolation. And so I will say that one of the areas that we've remediated in our Superfund site is perfect for that, because corn actually has to be about 3 miles from other corn in order to not cross-pollinate, unless you want to do the bagging and the hand pollination and all of that yourself. So I have a location that surprisingly I can get about 3 miles away from any other corn production. This year we were able to find the QUAPAW red corn, which is one of our heirloom corn varieties, and I've grown that out, and I'm getting that back into the hands of the QUAPAW people that want to try to do that, as well as anybody else. We also have 2 high tunnels at this location that we're able to do produce close to year round. It's still a high tunnel, so we haven't quite set it up for greenhouse production yet, but we are definitely extending the times that we can produce vegetables as well. We've done mini hoops. On the bottom left, you see that there's individual raised beds. We actually bought a hoop vendor, and we did mini outdoor hoops on that we can extend our outside season a little bit longer too. This year, this was something really exciting because we just kind of wrote a grant together with kidsgardening.org, and we were able to get enough money, or we actually were one of 30 out of 800 recipients that were able to get this grant. They provided seeds, they provided tools, they provided gloves, they provided soil, all kinds of stuff. I think we purchased the wood for the raised beds, and we got a nice donation from J&M Mushroom Farm up here to provide the compost for those beds. And this year it's really looking great, and those kids are having a great time in it. We decided to go ahead, since we were going to save out our seeds and everything, we were going to start a seed library. We named it Sihota, QUAPAW word for the good seed. And we wanted to provide seeds available for, of course, the community, tribal members. We just want to make sure that people have an opportunity to be able to grow their food. And unfortunately, the thing that we all probably need to worry about with climate change is definitely being able to provide food in the future. Another entity that we have is our Ogapa coffee roaster. We decided that through the course of, especially in casinos, you'll find that coffee is something that we go through a lot. So we tried to kind of integrate the supply chain, and we produce our own coffee, as well as we roast different varieties. They actually source a lot of this from different countries. Of course, you can't really grow coffee beans here, but we source it from indigenous groups around the world and bring it here and roast it in-house ourselves and make our own blends. Downstream also decided they wanted to have a brewery inside. We actually grow the hops at our greenhouses that we have located out at our downstream facility. And then they use different things integrated into their brews, including our honeys. So they've got a nice little honey brew. But it's a beautiful facility inside of the downstream casino, just yet another option that we were wanting to do to try to expand our businesses and things. Let's see. We do have 7 greenhouses at downstream casino. We are in the process of converting one of them into a hydroponics. As well as, you know, as you see downstream is where most of our bison is. In that top right picture, there's bison in the back in front of the raised beds. Let's see. We also have a large composting pile that we do at the casino. It only gets turned once a year, so it's not really a true compost, but we are able to bring out a lot of gourds and pumpkins and things in time for the holiday out of just throwing the leftovers in that pile, so that's really nice. Beehives. We had upwards of 75 beehives. We were looking to go for 100. Unfortunately, this year we had a late cold snap, and it really killed off a lot of the bees. And so we are actually going to replenish those. But it's definitely something that, you know, we're not giving up on. The honey that we produce is wonderful. And like I said, we put it into a lot of our products back at the casino, whether it be beer or something that they do in one of the restaurants. QUAPAW Farmers Market and Food Hub. This is another thing that we found is a really good community booster. We run a QUAPAW Mercantile, which carries our QUAPAW Cattle Company meats. Well, we decided to combine it in conjunction with the farmers market to make ourselves a food hub. The laws of Oklahoma changed this year to classify what an actual farmers market was. And so we figured it'd be best just to combine them all so we can provide fresh fruits, local, local harvested vegetables and things directly to the consumers, even on off-market days, so they can come in there as an actual store and purchase things, or they can come in on the farmers market to where it's more of a big event. And then also we do gardening and food preservation workshops and tutorials. We wanted to make sure that people had the capabilities of, you know, being able to do something with their fresh harvests. I don't know, I've heard from a lot of people that it's kind of a dying art too, as far as canning and preserving your fresh fruits, vegetables, really anything. So we've actually gathered a lot of information. We videoed our tutorials. We have in-person workshops. We try to take away all barriers. We provide a free rental program for all of our food preservation equipment. If somebody wanted to come in and rent it, they can do that for free of charge. It's a $25 deposit they put down, and when they return it, they get it back. You see in the top right-hand corner, we did a workshop for grape jelly. And so we provided everything that they would possibly need to take it home and make their own grape jellies after they've attended the class. So we're really doing what we can in order to, you know, reach out to a lot of people. My main goal is to make sure that people are fed. We want to make sure that, you know, nobody goes hungry, especially when it comes to our own community and our own tribal members and things like that. So take a lot of pride in it, and we have a lot of fun with it. Well, looks like that's it. Does anyone have any questions?
And people can unmute themselves just as a friendly reminder. or you can put it in the chat box. I'm not seeing any questions at this time, Michelle, but if anyone thinks of something after our next presenter speaks, then you're more than welcome to give a shout out. Thanks, Michelle. We appreciate you speaking with us today. Our next presenter is Mr. David REDHAGE with the KERR Center.
Okay, let's see how this works. So is everybody seeing my screen?
No, we're not seeing it yet, David.
Okay,
Make sure you hit the share button at the bottom.
I did hit the share button. I hit the share button again.
Then it should pop up something you're gonna have to select which one you want to share.
Uh-huh. Okay. Nope. Anybody seeing it yet?
Nope.
Okay.
It doesn't show that you're sharing anything.
Interesting.
Michelle, real quickly, can you hear me?
Can, yes.
Okay. Where do you have the I have a couple of questions for you, and I was trying to enter them and it wouldn't let me enter in the chat box. But oh, there we go. Okay, I'll wait. I'll hold them. We'll let David go.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Now, let's see. Okay. What I want to talk about is a little bit about cold frames because we've done work on them here at the KERR Center. And just to introduce myself, I'm David REDHAGE, president of the KERR Center, and I wear two hats. I'm sure Janelle mentioned that I also manage the Southern SARE PDP program for the Southern region. So I'm aware of what the work she does. But this is our first attempt at cold frames. We did this back in 1994, and these are 2x4 framing with PVC pipe hoops. And things have changed since then. We don't recommend, you can see a nice stand of lettuce worked really well, but in Oklahoma's windy climate, there were 3 of these set up, and one Sunday morning, a straight line wind came through, pulled one of these out of the ground and dropped it on the other 2 and destroyed them in about 20 seconds. So we don't recommend those anymore. This is our current cold frame. It's more a metal framing structure. It has some vents on the top. It has a manual roll-up side. Just to show you the difference you can get out of a cold frame, if you look at this thermometer, it's a min-max thermometer on April 21st. That morning, it got down to 31 degrees inside of the cold frame. Outside, it got down to a minimum of 25 on the left-hand thermometer. I was out there at 6:30. It had gotten to 27 outside. It got to 32 inside the cold frame. The entire inside of the cold frame, the plastic was covered with a thin sheet of ice. By 7 o'clock, 30 minutes later, the inside of that cold frame had risen to 46 degrees. So that shows you how fast these can heat up, number one. It also shows the temperature differential. Now, that was the coldest night. That was the cold snap we had. And one of the issues with it was I have electricity at this cold frame, so I was able to put a small, very small space heater in there with a box fan and left it setting at just under 60 degrees and run all night, but that's all I needed. Now, cold frames are something you manage. So what I did the day before is I shut the thing up and let the temperature get up in the 80s. I never let it get into the high 90s to hurt my plants, but that stored a lot of solar heat. So even though it got down to 31, I am growing some very cold, intolerant plants in this cold frame, and they're still there. This is what the plants look like on June 10th. Tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, and these plants are producing right now, but they survived that cold snap down to 31 degrees, which should have killed them. But they survived inside the cold frame and had enough heat to continue to grow and produce. So that's the benefit of a cold frame. And I've argued that just a little bit of supplemental heat on those occasional nights when it gets really cold can help push crops like this and allow you to really push them early in the year. And this is some of the harvest we got off of it. Now, obviously, if you notice, we're not utilizing the full space in here, and it's a soil-based hydroponic system with these livestock mineral tubs, so we're recycling them. And so it works. We could tighten it up and get more production out of it. This is a floating hydroponic bed, which we also had in there. We put a soluble fertilizer in there, float them on the foam, and you can get 2 crops out of this before you need to change the water out. So it works really well for us. We've also done this project with local schools in the area where we've provided cold frames. And this was actually done through a program with the Choctaw Nation. And they helped us with the materials, and we put it up and did a whole program with the kids, and they actually grew food in here. And the funny thing was they liked the lettuce, but the radishes, the kids didn't care for the radishes out of the cold frame. So that was kind of interesting. This is another example of a tunnel. It's a caterpillar style, and what the design is, you can pull the ends up and move it. You can also pull them up to allow you to bring tractors in to till the soil inside the cold frame. So I'm just showing you different examples, and I think one of the reasons this technology is so interesting to individuals is because it is so versatile. There's a lot of different things you can do with it and do cheaply. This example is one that's automated, and I got this in North Carolina, this photo, but the solar panel is what I want you to key in on. This is set up to be automated off the grid. So it's designed where there's a thermostatic control that allows the sides to roll up and down based on the air temperature, and that is one of the, if you will, strengths or weaknesses of a cold frame, in that a lot of them have manual roll-up sides, and somebody has to be on site monitoring that air temperature. And if it gets too hot, rolling up those sides to ventilate it. This is automated, so you don't have to be there to have that happen. Now, what is a high tunnel? It's designed to be temporary, not permanent like a greenhouse, minimal construction, possibly mobile. It's an unheated greenhouse, hoop house, walk-in cold frames. All those terms can be used interchangeably. It uses solar heat, and as I mentioned earlier, in some cases, a small backup heater. There's no electricity usually. In some cases, I had electricity on my site. No supplemental lighting. It's vented through the side walls, end walls, or peak vents, and you can use drip irrigation or hand water inside. It is in-ground culture. Some people specify that they want the stuff grown in ground, single layer of plastic. It's generally not in Oklahoma for year-round production because it gets too hot in the summer, and it can be relatively cheap compared to a full-scale greenhouse. And here's the components. And you can see the roll-up side there, the roll that allows you to roll the side up and down to ventilate. Now, advantages. The main advantages is it extends the growing season. Nighttime air temperatures, soil temperatures can be 4 degrees higher than outdoors. It shelters from wind, rain, hail, insects, and this is a key in Oklahoma, can reduce disease pressure. A lot of individuals I work with are struggling with outdoor tomato production because of the amount of moisture and rainfall we've been having, and with leaf diseases. In a high tunnel, you can control that, the wetting of the foliage, so that can reduce that disease pressure. You also control the water supply. It increases production and marketing opportunities because you're at market earlier and you can push later into the year. Many are designed that you can drive through, so you can use field equipment rather than hand work them. Disadvantages. They can be labor intensive. Remember I mentioned monitoring those air temperatures. You got to be around and watch that. In Oklahoma in the wintertime, the sun hits on a day, you can push that temperature 90 to 100 degrees and cook a lettuce crop real fast. So you need to pay attention to ventilation. Heavy rain, snow, ice, and wind can damage depending on how they're built and their location. High humidity inside early in the growing season can cause disease problems, and that's where that ventilation comes in. You need to water the crops even when it rains. Another disadvantage of this with in-soil production is that you can get salt buildup in the soil over time. And I had a cold frame on my garden that I managed for 3 years. And after year 2, I started to see salt damage. And by year 3, I almost couldn't grow anything inside the cold frame in the soil because of the salt buildup. So I had to move this cold frame off the site and let the rainfall leach the salts out of the soil. And now I can garden back on that spot again. Construction. It requires more per square foot than outdoor production. And I just put a number up there based on the cold frame that the KERR Center has. We got the design on our website. It's about, before the prices on everything went through the roof, it was about $1,400 for 1,100 square foot, $1.25 per square foot investment. You have to think about that in terms of recovering your cost. You need to have a source of irrigation water around so you can irrigate your crops inside. It needs to be all weather because you're growing in the off season in the winter when it's freezing. This is what happens to a cold frame when you have high winds or straight line winds. It can tear them down. This is a wind damage. This was a high tunnel program at Kansas State, and came through and completely demolished their cold frames. An advantage or disadvantage is that a cold frame's cheap, so you can put up 2 to 3 of these before you run into the cost of a full-scale greenhouse system. Other potential uses. Shade for people. We've used them as field day shade for people. I had one individual at a field day, saw one with 80% shade cloth on it that was mobile, and he said, I could design that for people picking my vegetable crops and drag it down the roads. Well, I hadn't thought of that. Shade for livestock. You can use it to exclude wildlife and insects, and you can use it for climate modification in the summer. I know growers, especially on the East Coast, that use this, again, to modify the summer climate, leave them open on the base and the ends all summer long, but grow crops underneath them because of the humidity levels causing leaf disease problems. And there's shade at a workshop, and that mobile high tunnel is mobile. We're using just old drill stem and bent our hoop houses, galvanized hoop houses, and bought 80% shade cloth on there. Also used it for livestock shade in a pasture. And this is shade only, no plastic on it. So we're using the hoops. So we got good ventilation in here, but it can reduce the heat stress even on tomato crop. If you get above 90 during the day or 95 and you get above in the high 80s at night, you lead to blossom abortion or aborting blossoms on a tomato and it won't pollinate. So this can help extend that tomato growing season. And it's a deep mulch season or a system, so there's very little weeding in here. Additionally, there's drip irrigation in there, so you just set it on a timer, have emitters on there, so how many gallons per hour you want, and be very effective in controlling how much water you add and when you add it to the system. Not to mention, when we had this project going on, we had interns, and they loved harvesting the tomatoes in here and weighing them because the shade cloth, it made it much more comfortable to harvest the plants. Now there's, he's retired now, George Kepper showing, and I just wanted to show in the background the high tunnel or the cold frame, and notice how the tomatoes are growing so vigorously, they've grown out the side of the tunnel on the side. And we leave them open. Now, the issue there is that you lose control at that point, and you can't have a rainfall could get on theirs and can potentially lead to leaf disease. Now that's Candace Pollock-Moore, who's the communications director for the SARE program front there. But those are high tunnel peaches at a high tunnel in Central Texas. So they're experimenting down there, and those are much taller than the tunnels we have here. But they're trying to grow peaches indoors again, because as you know, peaches bloom early and can lead to freeze damage. And if you can avoid that and get a good peach crop off, you got to watch your, and this is a much longer crop in here in terms of years of growing. So you got to watch your soil salinity levels. You got to watch your irrigation. Your pruning is a totally different techniques in here than field grown peaches. But again, it does offer some advantages for controlling insects, diseases, and weather modification. I put this one in years ago. I had this photo of a cold frame setup at OSU OKC. And what I wanted to point out is one of the varmints or pests you can get in your cold frames are rabbits. And if you look at the cold frame picture on the right, you will see the screen down there on the ground. And that's there simply, it allows ventilation, but it keeps rabbits out and helps keep mice out. Helps, not completely. But the idea is to prevent damage to your crops in there, just a simple little technique. We've run into problems with birds getting into our cold frame, and we've purchased some bird netting to put underneath the roll-up sides. It won't hurt the ventilation at all, but it will keep the birds out. This is a large mechanical, this This cold frame is set up on an electrical grid, and it has massive roll-up sides for a large tractor to get in. It has automated top vents on it. It's still a cold frame, but it does have electricity on site, so you can take these to a lot of different levels. This one is a mobile cold frame or greenhouse, and you can see this particular grower grew bedding plants and needed to harden them off in the springtime for sale. So what he needed was, rather than moving them individually in and out of this cold frame, he designed it so it's on a motorized tracking system, and he could move it off during the daytime, let them harden off, then pull it back over and shut the doors at night to protect them in the cold spring temperatures. So this is a way to allow for use of that to harden plants off for market sale. You also have the low tunnels, which are a different version of a cold frame, but they're small, low to the ground. You can't walk in them. So it's a little bit different. And then you've got the small hoop houses that people use in their backyards. They can be useful. You just have to understand how to manage them. This is another one that's totally Lexan, which is a very translucent material, lasts 10 plus years, but it can be real expensive to install. This one is an example of greenhouses. Double layer poly greenhouses have a squirrel cage or a motor on them to blow air in to create dead air space for insulation. This is a technology where you use simple plastic blocks that attach to the hoops, and you can put a second layer of plastic in it, manually holds that gap, so you have a double layer passive system which can add a couple of degrees of temperature protection to your plants in a cold frame system. Now, how extreme can cold frames get? This is a photo Kurt Rahm from Arkansas took in China years ago to show you how many cold frames. And when they talk about putting blankets over a cold frame to protect them in the cold, this is literally arms designed to pull giant blankets over these cold frames to keep them warm in the wintertime at night, and then they can roll them off in the summer. They also have a lot of cheap labor to do this, so they can do a lot more than we can with it. Now, when it comes to shade cloth, and realize with a cold frame, I said that it's hard to use them in the summer, but you can extend the season if you use shade cloth. So we recommend polyethylene shade cloth. Don't use PVC shade cloth. It'll damage the poly over your hoop house. You can have it cut to size. I recommend you get it with grommets. There's clips available that can work, but grommets allow you to tie off and tie it down and hold it in place. Light blocking, there's a lot of variation in there. You can get 30 to 40% works for vegetables, 50% for flowers, 60% for cool weather vegetables. And we found livestock wouldn't even walk under one if we had a 30 to 40% shade cloth. They needed 80% shade before they would even utilize it. So it's something to be aware of. And this is an example where we covered we were doing an experiment to see how it would affect the yield on the tomatoes. Half of that cold frame is covered with plastic and a shade cloth. The other half simply has greenhouse plastic, and the one behind it is strictly shade cloth. So it shows how you can utilize that. By putting shade cloth on top of plastic, I'd say, what's the advantage? Well, I still can keep a rainfall off of the plants and potentially reduce my disease pressure. So straight shade cloth will still allow rain through, and you could end up with some disease issues. So it's something you have to experiment with at your location. Coloration. Coloration of the shade cloth, you can reflect the sunlight off to reduce the temperature inside. So that's a choice you have to make. Site selection. Fertile, well-drained soil, this is kind of a given. But another thing about a cold frame, with our torrential downpours we seem to be getting, if you have it on a raised bed system, you control the amount of moisture inside the cold frame in the soil by keeping the rain off. You just have to make sure it drains around the cold frame and not into it. You want to have a full day of sun. Some people end up at their location, they'll think they can protect it from the wind by putting up next to trees. Well, the problem is you can end up with shade problems. So you need to watch that. Proper orientation for your particular, once you're a prevailing wind, so that it can blow through when you roll the sides up and ventilate the cold frame effectively. Make sure your site's free of persistent perennial weeds. Johnson grass is a big one. It can get in there and take over a cold frame. Wind, got to be careful. Too much, like I showed you, those cold frames we seem to have at our horticulture farm, a location that's subject to straight line winds. If I moved 100 yards south of that site, I don't have as much problem. So you have to know your location where you're going to put these up. You also have to consider scale appropriate tools. A lot of these cold frames are built with tall enough straight wall sides that you can till right up next to the plastic inside. You can use small garden tools. Another effective technique if you're growing in the ground is to use landscape fabric, cut your slots in there for your plants. And if you're growing other than lettuces, because a lot of times lettuces are bed sown in large areas, but if you're growing things like I showed earlier with tomatoes in the ground, you can cut your slots in your landscape fabric, keep all your weeds out, put your drip tape down, and then that will allow you to pull that landscape fabric up, clean it off, disinfect it, and plant it back, use it the next year, drop it on the ground. Your spacing is already set for your plants. So you don't have to do anything but plant into it. Now, one thing about cold frames is growing season. Plants stop growing when the day length drops below 10 hours a day. Why do I point that out? Well, you're not necessarily growing tomatoes into the wintertime, but you can grow lettuces, spinach, and they will stop growing. They won't die, but they will stop growing, and they just sit there. So for my location in Poto, and this is, other than a few days either side of this, it works pretty much for Oklahoma. November 29th, the day length drops below 10 hours a day. And then January 12th, it exceeds 10 hours a day, and plants will start growing again. Plant killing temperature varies depending on the varieties and species you're planting. Now, beets, radishes, turnips, they can survive down to 20 degrees, some kale down to 5 degrees with no protection. But watch for heat buildup in our climate because, again, as I mentioned earlier, the sun in Oklahoma in the wintertime can really push the temperatures up fast in these cold frames. When you're looking at growing the cold frame, a lot of people look at extending the season in the fall, and that's fine, but realize the number of days from seed to transplant is different because you're looking at how long you're going to harvest, and then your fall factor, you need to add 2 weeks to it because the plants start to grow more slowly as the days get shorter. And you have to watch for frost tender because 2 weeks, allow 2 weeks before the frost date, which is about October 15th for us. And then you count back days from the first frost date. Frost tender factor only applies to sensitive crops like corn, beans, squash, cucumbers. Your lettuces, kales, spinaches, they can handle it a little better, even Swiss chard. So you don't have to worry about the frost tender factor 2 weeks. You just look at the fall factor, back up 2 weeks from that. So hoop house and row covers can modify and allow for a later planting date, but don't forget that just because the temperature is warmer in there, you're still dealing with the day length issue. In the fall, a 2-day delay in planting can affect the harvest by 2 to 3 weeks because you're working on the back end of the calendar, and the effect, it gets more pronounced. So if you're trying to grow plants without supplemental lighting, the closer you get to that day in February or November 29th, when the day hits 10 hours a day length or less, the slower the plants are going to grow. Now, they list maturity days in seed catalogs, but they're based on spring planting when the days are getting longer, not on fall planting. Lettuce, you can start sowing in August, but watch out for the heat. If I'm growing, and I've done this, I've grown broccoli, kale, cauliflower, and transplanted the seeds in August. Planted them I put them underneath a table outside and let them germinate. They don't need the direct sun, and keep them watered, and then they'll germinate very rapidly. But then you have to watch. So as the temperature goes up in the late summer, you got to watch those plants, but you need to get them growing. So may need to place it in shade. Rule of thumb, sow the next planting after the first one germinates if you're trying to stagger your planting and harvest dates. So again, early August, every 5 days, late September, every 3 days. And then as you plant these crops out, you will have a supply all through the winter of different maturity dates. Now, this is an example where I talked about using the landscape fabric and using the drip tape under there just to show you what it looks like. So you can put the drip tape down, throw your landscape fabric over the top of it, have your holes cut in your landscape fabric, and you can see right there the spacing's already set. One thing we do recommend on landscape fabric, use a heated knife to cut that because if you don't, if the edges fray and they can start to unravel. So they're cheap to buy. I bought one off of Amazon to cut the squares in there so we can plant in there and not have that unravel. Challenges. You got to manage that temperature when it fluctuates in the winter. You also have to watch the humidity and watch for diseases and insects. Weeds grow faster and earlier in a high tunnel. So if you're growing in the soil and you're not using landscape fabric, you're going to have to watch for that and keep your weeds under control. One thing I will say, it can be more pleasant working in a cold frame in the cool winter day or an early spring day because it's pleasantly warm in there. So you can get in there and do your weeding and it's really nice. Watch for the salt buildup, and not just if you're using conventional fertilizers, but even if you're using manure and compost, you can still have salt buildup in those situations, and there's no rainfall to leach it out of the soil. So you will notice over time, that's why I kind of like the ability of having the ability to move my cold frames to new sites, so I can let the old site leach outside, grow cover crops on it, build up the organic matter, and then I can move the high tunnel back at a later date. There's going to be challenges and disappointments. You can see all the weeds in this cold frame. That's a given. But that is what, but the advantage in the tunnel is that it, again, allows you to extend the season in the spring or extend it into the fall. It allows you to control for the climate change we seem to be having with our torrential rainfall we're getting and some of the temperature swings we're getting. You can moderate those. So, it's an excellent tool and something to consider. You can start small with a small one, learn how it works, and then expand if you feel comfortable with the technology to use it on a larger scale. Do you have any questions?
And you guys can unmute yourselves like I've mentioned before if you have any questions. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm not seeing any hand raises. So if I get any questions after the fact from anybody, then I will just shoot them over to you guys through email. Thank you guys so much for presenting today. We really appreciate you guys coming on and presenting. These presentations were really informative and really great. So without you guys, we couldn't do these webinars without people like you. So thank you again. And if anyone has any questions after the fact, you're welcome to email it to me, or you can email them directly. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Bye.